I would like you to tell us little about you, what you did in your life, and where you have reached now, how you reached.
Okay, so like any student of life, I always believe in continuous learning. And I guess just because it's continuous learning, I guess even if on the last day of my life on this earth, I would be still doing something for sure. So that's one reason why. And post my graduation in microbiome and biotech, I did my MBA in finance, and I landed up with a pharma organization, and I landed up in the directly reporting to the CFO in the finance department, and that's where my career took off. Got married and moved to US for some part of time, and then had motherhood. So took a little bit of sabbatical of around 2.5 years, and then joined back. And this time when I joined back, things were very different, because after having a gap of 2.5 to 3 years, the market was very, very different. So I started from pharma because I had microbiome, biotech, and an MBA finance. But this time there was nobody who was wanting to take me back in pharma, because 3 years is a good span for having left it, and our world has changed. Then started my entire new life, entire new career. I had to start all over again, and this time it was with Birla Sun Life Insurance. It was with an insurance organization, not from where I left, but all over again. It was very quick, very fast. Moved on to ICICI Bank, then moved on to Max New York Life. Finally, I was heading a branch, 3 branches here in Mumbai. That was what I did before I finally left it. Now I quit it. So why did I quit? It was almost like the year 2010. Now it's close to 23 years after I completed my MBA and started my career. So this was the time when I felt my life, my career would be spanning or taking around 15 to 16 hours of my every single day. And I had two growing up children at that time, and very young. Somewhere deep down in my heart, it would always pain to see me not able to spend that kind of time. So what happens is that when you progress in your life before time, like, when you were in your early 30s and you were getting in so many things, and the children are really small, you do get a lot of exposure, you do get a lot of learnings. Something else that you miss was the domestic front. So I was planning as to what do I do so that I can, leverage on being with my boys, and at the same time also do something which I'm passionate about. So if you were to ask me 23 years back, would you be a trainer in your life? The answer would be like, trainer, because at that time trainers had a different perception. They would be the typical old uncles or old aunties, like, and they would have the same gisapita thingy. It was very different. I would have never thought that I'm becoming a trainer. That was the kind of space that I operated from. And one fine day, leaving it all and moved, it's almost 10 years now, 2010 November, and that's exactly 10 years now, almost there. That's when I decided what next, because I want to do something and at the same time be with my boys. And that's where suddenly I thought, during my childhood, one thing I loved to do was talking. And I realized there is only one profession in which you could keep talking without being interrupted, and that's training. Well, because what you love doing it, you just went ahead, did that, right? So the first option was for me to be in an intellectually intensive, then be a capital intensive kind of a space, because we are the first generation entrepreneurs. We are all academicians, and we are working with government organizations. That's the kind of mindset we operate from, right? So being an entrepreneur was very difficult. So at least being a passionpreneur, thinking about what's your passion. I love to talk, and talking is something that I would love to get in a training space. That's how I changed gears at that point in time. And that's how this 10 years happened. And the 10 years eventually led me into being a trainer first, then learning how to facilitate, then learning how to coach, do one-on-one coaching, to group coaching, becoming an experiential trainer or facilitator kind of a thing. And now slowly getting into the space of professional speaking as well.
But right now, I want to keep my focus around storytelling. So, tell us about how you look at storytelling and your view about using stories.
One thing I really love, I guess, even when I was a child, I would have this group of small little younger children than me sit together, and I would be engaging them into some kind of horror stories. मुझे बहुत मजा आता था to get them scared, because I had the upper hand. I would I'll imagine all kinds of horror stories in my head. I would go and narrate it out to them with all the backdrop music and impact, and kind of like abhi pata kya ho gaya, create that kind of climax. And finally, when everybody's engrossed, I'm like boom. And then I guess there was a bit of storytelling right from the start. When I go to church, the priest would give us sermons. Those used to be stories. When I used to go to church, the Sunday school, we used to be going to the Bible school or the Sunday school. And every time we would have stories, parables from the Bible. So even if you see the Bible, it has a lot of parables, a lot of stories which we can link to, which we can connect to. Some of the parables are with a moral.
Yes.
So like even if I have to see, stories are there everywhere. So today, more than reading books, I sometimes land up reading more human beings. So I like a human library. So I would like to sit with Kiran and know what Kiran is all about. What has been the story of Kiran? Do I have something that I can use it and say it in, share it with people around? So there has been always a motto saying that, aspire to inspire before you expire.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love the very fact that stories can be very inspirational, right? Stories can be used for influencing, used for inspiring. It's used to evoke a purpose within a lot of us, right? Stories take you to a different world altogether. Right from then, when I would be hearing stories, or rather reading stories, even if it's been Amar Chitrakatha or a Tinkle or a Chanda Mama or a Champa, you get drifted to the world of the space who has written that story. You have a different perception. So you've been born and brought up in Mumbai, but then you have fairy tales and you actually start imagining, wow. And this was something that always helps you to be more creative with a lot of things, right? So how has stories helped? Stories have helped multifold, manifold. You want to put across a point to someone, it becomes very difficult to talk to Kiran directly. But sometimes I can drive an analogy from someone else's story. You know what happened there? And then I can drive it and say, this is exactly what I'm saying. You should be careful. That happened there. Or you could create stories. Sometimes your children don't want to listen to you. And you could create and say, what happened? That little boy put that peanut like that. They have the habits of playing with the peanuts and putting it into their mouth. Many a time it gets stuck and you really have a choking problem. So you go and create a nice little story around that. And then you make them understand. So stories can be, it's something that can give you that engagement, that involvement. And it's important, very, very important to be authentic. So when you fake stories or when you're not feeling connected to the stories, that also comes out pretty clear. So that's my take on how stories have influenced. And to tell you one more thing, my grandfather, my dad's father, he used to be working with the British folks in Kerala farms. Okay, he used to be working in the farms of them, and he used to have this chaste English, spoken English, learned from them. So whenever we used to be traveling to Kerala from Mumbai, he would keep telling, stories. Once upon a time there was a, like that, and I really loved what I heard. And I feel sometimes if I have to think back and say, where did it start? I guess sometime maybe it's all started from my grandfather sharing those stories to me. It really got me on there. Just to give you one more before you ask me, I would like to say this on record right now. So when I was small, I used to always sit with the geography book. You remember our geography books used to be the most longest book, the biggest and the longest book. And it used to be very easy for me to keep a storybook inside and stay with that. Don't ask me. And my mom, if she's listening this right now, she's going to know that. How many times she's caught me and she's given me a nice little twist on my ears. So that between the books, you had to keep another book and read. So at that time, they wouldn't encourage us to read those storybooks and comics. I had to literally do that. And that's a nice memory I have right now.
How you bring in storytelling in your project Leaders in Lipstick?
Thanks, this is a nice little question. And Leaders in Lipstick is a very, very close project to me. And as I said, even while I am doing a training session, we use a lot of stories and we need to use a lot of stories. Like I see in stories for trainers in the platform that you have, it's a very nice thing that you give the entire story and leave it at that, right? It becomes easy for a trainer or a facilitator to engage the audience with that story or to connect with that story to a great extent. Sometimes what happens, you hear the whole story, the story moral is also given, then you don't have anything to derive from the group wisdom. But here what happens, you give the story and you leave it at that space, and then you are giving the opportunity to the speaker or the trainer or the facilitator to go ahead and facilitate the whole session and get the answers from the group. And the group comes with amazing answers because everyone has a different perspective, and stories are food for thought, they're fuel for thought. Now, talking about leaders in lipstick, I love this, and this is very close to me primarily for the one reason, that I embody women, and I know the difficulties that we go through, especially when we are talking about being in the corporate space. So, Leaders in Lipstick is a boutique creation that we have. It's basically catering to the millennial and the Gen Z women workforce in the corporate and the business women as well, right? It's basically to help them unleash their amazingness. Why did I go for this? So there was a statistics which was there that a mid-level management cadre is represented by 25% of women, okay, and a senior level group or the senior level of management is only with 4%, which means there is a good drop between from the 25% to the 4%, which is like a 21% drop. It means a lot. It means there is something that we need to work on, we need to cater on, we need to look upon as to what is that is not helping us to move to the 21. Is it because somewhere we thought our family is a priority and we thought forget it, forget the chuck the career, let's focus on, are we always supposed to have the syndrome of being a superwoman, or is it okay that we can balance it all or we can integrate it all? How do I use stories? It's basically collecting. So I'm actually making my ebook of Leaders in Lipstick, and while I'm doing the ebook of Leaders in Lipstick, the main reason was to collect the stories of all those women who have been there, done that, and still have been able to reach in that 4% of the senior management. And I wanted to know what exactly it takes to be there. They were married, they had kids, they had families, and they had a corporate career too. If they could do, can we also model it to get there? So these are stories which are inspiring. These are stories which give us some fuel for learning a lot many things, otherwise which would have been difficult for us to understand or know. So if they can do, even we can do. That's what these stories are going to be saying. So I am collecting around 10 good women that women folks would love to hear about. Take them through their stories. That's the story that we are building up in Leaders in Lipstick.
Okay, so what is this sanitary pad to launch pad?
That's my TEDx talk, and that happened in 2017. Again, as I said, it's always a close subject to be there. And TEDx happened to me in 2017, and I was with there another six good speakers from the space as well. Now, the most beautiful thing is that you come across very strong, very powerful, very impactful women as you move in that journey, and their stories are very inspiring. I had a fellow TEDx speaker with me. She was from the Mahindra family, right? And she started, and everybody has a story to share. And I've always realized these are stories which inspire. So, like, aspire to inspire before you expire. So, like, each and every story matters, and everything matters, each and every simple. So, she lost her mother to cancer, and because she lost her mother to cancer, she started a program wherein she would care and support for the families who are going through or having cancer patients or members in their family. Because most of the time, the family members go through a lot of problems or issues. Like, similarly, I had somebody who was working for getting acid attack to victims getting married. That was another. So she had this website called as legno.com, and where she would go ahead and make all the acid attack women to get married and have a life just like a normal woman as well. So sanitary pads to launch pads was a beautiful journey. It was to talk to the women how important that if we celebrate life, life also celebrates us.
Siji, you have lot of certifications. So how did your storytelling skills or liking about storytelling it helped you getting those, and how you are using those?
So there is one thing that I am a little different with, if I'm in a workshop and I have 30 or 35 people in my workshop, I have this habit of remembering each and every name before even the first break in the day,
Oh,
right? And so people generally quiz and ask me, what's a memory technique that you use to remember 35 names? हम लोगों को तो एक नाम भी हम लोग का टेबल का नेम भी याद रखना इतना मुश्किल होता है. How do you remember 35 names? And I was keep wondering, because every time I do this, every time I get applauded, like, wow, ma'am, you are remembering 35 names, 40 names just before even our first tea break. How do you do that? And I would realize that there is no specific technique that I'm using. And then I go back and reflect, what is that how am I able to remember these names? And a very funny thing came up. The funny thing was like any time anybody says a name, like for example, Kiran would say his name. Now, how would I create a hook in it? So when he would say Kiran, and you would say a couple of things about you, like let's say you love to read or you are in ad or something, and I would create a hook with that. And for me, then to remember Kiran becomes much easier. I would associate that as a hook. And so what one thing that I realized is like for me, certain things come very easily. Right. So this storytelling is also something that I feel it was something I always had. What is storytelling actually? It's the way you use your words. It's the way you use your facial expressions, your body language, and the way you use your tone. How you modulate it, कब slow जाना है, कब fast जाना है, everything, all that's an element of storytelling, right? And I felt I'm very dramatic and naughty in a full package. So whilst I led through all the certifications too, I've always remembered one thing, that I learn the best when I'm talked in the form of stories. So even if I have to do a story, and there's something that I did in ROI. Now ROI is a very functional and a technical space. I would remember ROI only because of the stories or the case studies that we did. So stories had a big role. When I did my NLP and my advanced NLP, it was all backed with loads of stories and cases. I had to connect with those, and then only I understand the subject. So for me to take a certification, if I have to understand the subject and if I have to produce it to teach you, I have to link it always with a story. And I feel doing that. So when I also do my sessions for others, I always connect it with a story. Because I feel if it was easy for me to remember and learn it with a story, so is the case with everyone, because everyone enjoys stories. And I've also, research has actually gone ahead and proved that more than facts and figures, people connect to things through stories.
How you build stories and how you use them in your trainings, presentations, or in speaking engagements?
If you see, if it's a selling skills workshop, let's say, then I would have a character. Let's say I have Kiran as a character, and I would drive the character Kiran for the whole day. And in Kiran, we would have multiple characters joining him, multiple scenarios happening with Kiran the whole day. So it sometimes you can have it as a loop, not as having single stories in a workshop. You can carry the loop of Kiran throughout the day. So you're talking about Kiran and you're talking about selling skills. So we're talking, how did Kiran go ahead and address this scenario? How did Kiran address that scenario? We bring in more characters, but Kiran stays the same.
Okay.
What happens is at the end of the day, in the selling skills workshop, every individual in the workshop is able to connect himself with Kiran, because they feel that there is so much of Kiran that even we do. The character of Kiran is so much relatable. There's so many parameters in which Kiran is just like us. And what happens, the learning is pretty fast. Right? Another, how do I go around building is, I have the habit of observing people. I feel I'm very good with observations, and because I've been traveling across, I always love to hear what people say. I would come back, use those stories to inspire people or influence people in the workshop. because they're genuine, authentic, relatable stories. They're not fairy tales. They are not stories which is just imagined. They are real life. So I find it a real good value at times to have a human library than having just a book library. So knowing these humans, it gives you a lot of inspiration. It's one, because you feel if somebody can do that, why can't I? It's quick, relatable. So I observe even from my youngest child in this room, because I feel even they come out with such amazing takeaways.
Right.
Sometimes I go back and use websites, like your website is there, stories for trainers. So like you have for purely for presentations, you have for value education, and you also have like the Bollywood sequences, right? Now if I want to create that, I would go around, built on that, take in, download some of it and use it. Yeah. So Powtoon and Go Animate is one way, but I feel you can use that time by collaborating or outsourcing it from people who have already done that basic work for you. So YouTube channels like yours, where you have stories for trainers, which is so easily available, where you have to just put the category name and then you get a plethora of things where you don't really have to search for too many things. And then it's really nice because you can connect, you can use them. Just simple, and the message comes out pretty clear, right? So even I love what I see in that Bollywood thing. It's a really really nice thing. So like for example, when I was doing a paradigm shift mindset, I would go ahead and watch the entire movie of Munna by MBBS and sit and trim all those places where I have to bring the whole story together. So when if stories for trainers is easily available, where you have done the hard work already, why not take it directly and use it? That helps even more, right? So it's always good that channels like this or spaces like this are available for trainers, facilitators, to create that kind of interest, the engage, the involvement, the influence, the inspiration, and to reach out to a bigger mass of people.
Right now, I will take this opportunity to invite Prasad Rajgopalan, who is founder of Stories for Training.
Like Siji mentioned, three things: parables, the importance of analogy to make a point, and the dopamine rush. In fact, these were the three reasons why we started Stories for Training. This, as you mentioned, this is the first OTT channel for presenters. See, for the presenters, the biggest challenge is how do you start a conversation with the audience? Because the audience, when they come to a meeting, they are under a stress. Maybe they are. Let's say today, social media has become a big addiction. So how do you bring them out? The best way is storytelling, because storytelling gives you the dopamine rush, which can get your attention and focus. And the best storytelling is using parable, because they are short and with a great meaning. This is the channel, right? We have created a library of 90-second story-based videos. So we have got three categories, as CJ mentioned, for presentation, for value education, and Bollywood Se Seeko. So let me play one from Bollywood Se Seeko.
ऑल इज वेल बोलो, दिल को तसल्ली मिलती है और वो शांत हो जाता है. ऑल इज वेल बोलो, दिल को तसल्ली मिलती है और वो शांत हो जाता है. ऑल इज वेल बोलो, दिल को तसल्ली मिलती है और वो शांत हो जाता है.
A young boy is neglected by his busy father. never get so busy making a life that you forget to make a life.
I also got a nice little idea while you were showing this one.
Okay.
This had absolutely no talks between
Right.
each other. We could actually use this as a medium to engage the participants. Like we could say, one of you play the role of a father and one of you play the role of a child.
Right.
And please speak. In each of the frame, you could make them speak. Kuch bolo. Like what could be the father speaking to the son, and what is the son replying back? We could have it as a drama thing, even in engaging them. And I feel that's quite a engaging way to engage stories. Yeah. So as I said, it's something which is easily available. Invest your time in something more productive, because if this is available for such a nominal rate, why not use it? You would spend that many hours to do something in Go Animate or Powtoon. It's not so easy. And you have to think about the script, you have to think about a story. And when something like this is easily available, we could have an amalgamation and work it more faster, easily.
Great.
That's how I think it works better.
What is your own personal formula to build any story?
So first and foremost, if I have to say something for the budding trainers or facilitators, I would always want to tell one thing. It's very important not to copy anyone. And I've always felt being authentic or being you and bringing your flavor is always the best thing that you can offer. The moment we try to become like someone or ape someone, we actually lose our original space. And today, what I'm seeing with this current generation, content is the king. We all know that. And this is what we have been hearing, content is the king. When I was growing up, I would look at my grandparents if they're working. And when that was a generation where people would work for survival. So at that time, my grandparents, so they were working for survival. When my parents started working, it was for living, for creating a living, right? So survival is done, basic needs are done. Now we need to live, right? By the time we started working for a lifestyle, right? So survival was taken care of, living is taken care of. Now we want something better. So we had our air conditioner rooms and houses and cars, the electronic gadgets and all those things which is there. And the current generation, which is the generation now, our kids and so forth, they're the generation whose survival has been taken care of, whose living has been taken care of, whose lifestyle has been taken care of. So they really do not have to worry about these three aspects. Now what drives them is they feel, मुझे ना life में significance create करना. I want to create significance. I want to create significance in my life and the other's life. And you know what they do? Because they want to create that significance, they're always wanting to make stories, create stories. So you will find this current generation, they like to travel a lot. They like to do things which we were scared to do, right? They like to go ahead and be there exploring things, because these are stories for them. These are live experiences. This is what is they're going to share it with the whole world. And as they rightly say, at the end of the day, you should have more stories to tell than more stuff to show. So it's okay even if your house is minimalistic, but you have stories, because people find it nice to be with a person who has stories and life experience to inspire and influence them, rather than showing off in the house कि मैंने ये भी खड़ा कर दिया, मैंने वो भी खड़ा कर दिया, मेरे पास 10 गाड़ियां हैं. It doesn't matter. It's okay if you don't have the stuff, but it's important that you have a story, and everybody thrives on that story. When I got my Karmaveer award and when I was there, I realized every 220 people who across the country and many other parts of the world had come in had a beautiful story within them. And I would find a lot of millennials there who is wanting to create that significance and difference. And they come out with amazing ways to reach there. And their stories are very inspiring and influencing. I would like to say, trainers, if you're somebody who loves to travel, who love to listen to stories, who love to be with people, learn, hear, observe, absorb, and create stories. And be you while you are sharing the stories. Be you while you are demonstrating, exhibiting that story. Because each one of us have a flavor, right? We all are different. We talk stories in our apne andaz mein. right? So we talk, if I'm a Mumbaikar, I talk in a Mumbaiya language. And when I talk it out there in North, people would say very sweet language of Hindi. And I would say, I feel your language is so much of tehzeeb and adab. And the type of language that I come, it's like a typical Tapori types. But they find that uniqueness. They love that, right? So we come with our own flavors. When I go abroad, when I do my ROI lessons abroad, maybe it's in US or in Sri Lanka, I have a story that I carry along with me as a person, right? We are a story package in our own selves. And we come across so strongly to the people that they never forget you. So stories create impact. If you have valuable stories where people do takeaways, a lot of things about you, there's something about you that inspired them, right? If I have to tell you one beautiful story that's happened in my own life, 2016, there was this person who was listening to my session. He was a young guy of 25, 26 years of age. That was way back in 2016. He attended my 3-day workshop, right? It was on interpersonal skills and communication skills. I don't know what, sorry, I don't know what exactly rubbed onto him. Exactly 2020, in the month of, I think around June, he writes to me after a real long time and says, Siji ma'am, you remember I was in your class in 2016 and I called you up to say because of you that I left the job. And I was like, oh really? You left the job because of me? So that's good or bad? But it's because of you. Today I'm proudly saying that I have got into the civil services because after listening to you, I felt if there is somebody, a lady at this age, she's still ready to follow her passion. Why not me? That rubbed onto me. I went back, left my job, took up my civil services study again, and today I have come in the top ranks and I am an IAS officer.
Wow.
You couldn't have a better testimony than this in your life, and you feel मेरी तो purpose बन चुकी है, एक जन को भी impact किया तो बहुत हो गया. Like, right? So probably you were meant to just be that impact or the medium or the vehicle for just that one person also. But there were many times I see many people come back to me and say, 3 years back, and I would like, do you remember me from the 3 years back? Because most of us don't remember the trainer after 3 weeks. कोई तो आगे सिखा के गया. But they're where? So it could be the power of stories that you connect them with, the relatability that you have, the being very authentic you, not having a facade, but being your genuine self. That could be something that would have changed everything in them. Like, for example, I like to give you one more story what happened. Okay, so there's this lady, and I was doing one of those women empowerment programs. And I lost my father almost 18, 19 years back. And losing a most loved one in your life teaches you a lot of lessons, right? And that's probably the reason I feel that we need to cherish each and every moment with every loved one of our life, because you not know that whether you get another opportunity to do that, right? And I was explaining the same thing, and we were talking about the same thing in the session. And there was this lady, she calls me up after 3 months of the session and she says, Siji, thank you so very much. I have been postponing to visit my parents from last 2 years. And after the session, I decided to go and meet my parents. I stayed 6 days with my dad. And after a week's time, I lost him. And if it was not for that decision, I would have regretted this decision for the rest of my life that I did not meet him. Right? So there you really do not know what could inspire or influence someone to take an inspired action. So if you're talking about stories, are you talking about stories in such a way that influences them or inspires them to take an action? ऐसा नहीं कि story सुना, मस्ती किया, गया. It's about, can I evoke a purpose out of that story? That's very important. And to see the purpose in the story is something very beautiful. That's how you go. And I feel my formula is basically most of the stories are dil se. So when you say those stories from dil se, it creates that inspired action. And even after 4 years, 5 years, or maybe 10 years later, also people will still come back and say, Siji, that one thing that you said that day, it changed something in my life.
But I would like to end this talk with, your one favorite story.
I have this beautiful story, and this is coming from Viktor Frankl, Dr. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Purpose. It's like man's search for meaning, right? As I said, stories evoke a sense of purpose. This is one story, trust me, that people just listen to it and they're speechless because it puts them into a reflective mode, and it's a real story, it's a real anecdote, it's a real incident that has happened, not with me but with Dr. Viktor Frankl. Okay, now the story goes about like this. So as we know, Dr. Viktor Frankl was a Jew, and he was in the space of Adolf Hitler's era, and right, and at that time all of them, the Nazis had the Jews imprisoned and they used to go through, so we have read about that, how bad the concentration camps used to be, and how brutally people were treated,
Yeah.
the Jews were treated, we all read about it, right? So Dr. Viktor Frankl was also a prisoner once, right? So what he says that people who have been subjected to extreme abuse or trauma for continuous 2 months. And if they're left free also, they can never come back to their original space. The brain rewiring goes for such a big toss that they just can't think back like what they used to think back 2 months back. Right. So many people who were freed also, not only did their own lives get impacted, but they messed up 2 generations later also. Like, for example, if Kiran is scared of water, he would not allow his son also to get into water. And somewhere he will pass on the fear of water to his son too. In a similar format, everybody who was a survivor happened to mess up the next 2 generations also. They all lived in a world of fear. Right? The damage was to this extent. So, Dr. Viktor Frankl was a psychotherapist by profession. So, for him, after 3 months of being in that uh, very, very abusive, traumatic space, he could still somehow come back. And once he was freed, and many of the others were freed, one night at 3 a.m. or early morning at 3 a.m., he gets a call. And on the other side of the call is a lady. And the lady says to him that I want to commit suicide. And she gives him the reason why she wants to commit suicide. And she says that I want to commit suicide because I've lost it all my family members and everything in my life thanks to this Nazi torture. Okay, and I want to die. And because Dr. Viktor Frankl was a doctor by profession, he wanted to ensure that even one life is not lost. So he tried convincing her why not to commit suicide. He gave her n number of reasons why she should not commit suicide, and she kept telling him why I want to commit suicide. There was a small little conversation. She kept saying why, and he kept saying why not to. Right? It went on for some time, and finally she hung up the phone. Now, this was a confused space for Dr. Victor. He wasn't sure as to what happened to this lady because it was that era when you don't know who was the incoming caller, and neither could you give a call back to check. Right? And so he was waiting for the caller to give a call again. And he kept waiting for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and he started losing hope. Exactly 2 months later, he gets a nice little handwritten note. And it says, Dear Doc, I haven't committed suicide. And I did not commit suicide because of the reasons you told me not to commit suicide. But I did not commit suicide because I thought that even if there is one person in this world to listen to me at 3 a.m., there is still hope left in this world.
Wow.
And that exactly shows why today in our daily lives, listening is considered to be one of the most important skills that we all should possess.